All right, good morning, everybody. This is Zen and the Art of Business Value Analysis. It's another pretentious talk in which I speak on a subject that I've only organically discovered, but there's surely a huge body of knowledge around it to do it much more efficaciously. That said, I'm presenting on this today because, as somebody who's been a very deep practitioner for many years, I'd like to reflect on the arc and trajectory of my own career and think about the major lessons I learned that have eventually allowed me to communicate or be more effective in my role. So I'm going to go ahead and press on in the arrogant confidence of a mediocre white man. And speaking of which, I'm Jon Lehtinen. I'm a director at Okta. I'm also on the board of directors of IDPro. And above all, the views and opinions expressed in this talk are my own and not necessarily shared by any previous or former employers or any organizations with which I am presently or have been affiliated. Our incantation has been said, let's proceed. Come on, there we go. Lots of clicker problems this conference. All right, so let's talk about the language of business. Something that I have picked up over time has been talking about identity or technology for technology's sake is a losing proposition for accomplishing what you want because the business speaks money. If you want to get the business's attention, you need to learn to speak in the terms of value and either revenue generation or cost out that they value. And since most of you presumably work, I'm sure you've been in organizations where you have your beautiful golden children that are revenue generating departments. They seem to be present at the roadmaps, get a lot of the investment that we Morlocks in the cost centers of IT and occasionally security are really covetous of. So a trap that I've fallen into at various times in my career has been I want to build the most beautiful, perfect identity system ever, because I know full well that by doing so, we're going to be able to solve all the compliance and security challenges and generally make the business much more agile by doing so. So I come and I state, hey, I love a big slab of granite, and I need these special hammers and these artisanal chisels, and then I'll produce you this glorious system which is going to make your wildest dreams come true. That doesn't fly very well because they have other media for you to use, and you know what? They know how much that costs, and you don't really need to make an argument for changing your tool set or even introducing new service capabilities because you are already a sculptor. And believe it or not, they maybe don't have the warm affection of a parent looking at their child's creation when they review this, and neither do we, but at the end of the day, is it not a sculpture, just like the one before? Which brings us back to a point I'm going to be saying so much is going to become stupid. The language of business is money, thus we must learn to speak their language to be heard. So, another thing about business that took me a very long time to fully appreciate is metrics. I have an opinion on metrics, and Mark Twain popularized the phrase lies, damn lies, and statistics in his autobiography that was actually credited to Benjamin Disraeli. I'm going to go ahead and put a little twist on this. You have lies, damn lies, and metrics. A lot of the time and things we measure inside a business aren't necessarily proving or demonstrating the value of your practice and discipline to the business because all you're doing is moving metrics around, like line goes up, we have X number of Y things inside of our Z platform. So what? What does that mean? If you learn how to pick the one metric that is worth a darn, and that's going to be the thesis of my talk, which is business value metrics, not only does that help you contextualize your activities in identity or security as either a business enabler or a cost savings activity, professionally, it also demonstrates your greater awareness of the context of your work to leadership. So there's a little bit of good signaling that comes with developing this line of thinking. It's also going to build credibility for future program asks, because if you start doing business value analysis and aggregating the metrics that are directly attributable to business and their bottom line, then you can start building a history, a track record of how your program has influenced that value proposition to date. Because, guess what? The language of business is what now? Excellent. You're going to be saying that a few more times. So rather than just wave my hands and be overly animated and flop sweaty about how important it is that we learn how to speak the language of business, we're going to go ahead and walk through a simple case study about how we can apply some perhaps very novel level business value analysis type thinking to a project which we may have participated in. In this case, this is for rollout of a new passwordless authentication capability. Oops. So an organization wants to roll out passwordless authentication as another authentication option across everything else they offer their internal employees. So if we're going to apply some business value thinking to that, let's consider what this new change may have an effect upon your current state system, the things that could be displaced by it, right? If we're using passwordless, there's an outside chance the other authenticators may be used less, so we can keep an eye on that. If we're doing anything with passwords, there's a password recovery story that could be impacted. In the case of something like passwordless, are we going to see if the number of password recovery activities, either self-service or through the help desk, goes down because passwords are used less? Or the inverse case, what happens if because you're using your password less, every time you need to use it, you got to be reminded of it and go through that recovery? And then, of course, feature penetration. Excuse me. To Ian's point, yesterday he said that rolling out a feature but having zero adoption means you functionally accomplish nothing from the point of view of executives. And of course, there's always opportunities for time savings, even though in this example we're going to really stretch the definition of how much time per employee we're really saving here to generate some impressive numbers. Now, if you're struggling to find the right business value drivers behind your project, well, this is a great opportunity for you to crawl out the spider hole, make some friends with your end users and your business leaders, because they certainly have opinions and points of view which perhaps we are not considering. So this is a great chance for you to expand your influence throughout the organization. So now that we've considered what options we have for how our change may impact certain functions inside of our systems, now we got to see how reasonable it is that we can acquire that data. So let's take a look at our available sources, data warehouses, logs, help desk tickets for things like password resets, determine what metrics are readily available so they can be harvested with a low level of effort, because I'm sure we've all wasted an entire workday trying to put together a single PowerPoint slide that shows a number goes up or down. And then once we have all that information, we're able to calculate our business value analysis based on that available data. And what this does is it kind of winnows down the story you're going to tell based on level of effort and whether or not you can actually provide the data to tell that story. So we're going to be filling out this little table, and this table is going to grow as we move on. So we've narrowed this down to 3 value drivers we're keeping an eye on for our business value story. And the first thing we're doing, and we narrowed them down primarily because of ease of getting this information. If it takes too much effort, not fun. So another important piece here is we count, or we take a period of time before the change, and we measure those business value drivers in the current state. This is going to give us our control against which to make comparisons to see if our change really did make an impact. And then we're going to calculate the average cost of each one of those current state drivers. For something like password reset, there's already an agreed upon industry standard value based on analysis. It's approximately $70. For things that involve employee productivity, you may have to do some research, perhaps consult your internal marketing teams to see if they have any baseline personas for average costs or salaries per users. And we're going to determine the average cost of an employee in terms of time. So we're actually going to get down to the second with this. And doing that is important to know that the standard HR work year, at least in America, is 2,080 hours. So that's what we'll be dividing our salaries over. So we already know how this value gets populated. No need to dwell here. Here, we're going to take a look at self-service password resets, right? We're going to clock the time it takes for us to go through a self-service password reset flow. We'll say it's approximately 5 minutes. We'll then get the information for our organization, what the average annual compensation is for an employee, and then we're going to do some math. The time for self-service password reset in seconds, 300, times your average salary, divided by 2080 HR standard hours, divided by 60 for the cost per minute, 60 again, cost per second. At the end, you see that each password self-service reset costs, in terms of the employee sitting there idle, about $5. Similar story with waiting for an MFA prompt. And this one's funny. We do the exact same math again. We clock this one at about 9 seconds. We see it's about 15 cents per event. So not really a big push here. But when we start doing some calculations, you might be surprised at how quickly that adds up. Criminy. All right. There we go. Okay, so now we've implemented our change. And we're going to let it soak as long as our control data. This is going to let us see and confirm our hypothesis that the changes had an impact on the business value drivers that we actually cared about. And we get some new values here. We see a reduction in the count of self-service password resets over the same time period after the change. We see a decrease in the number of password reset requests received by IT support. And we also see a significant drop in mobile push authentication usage across our entire populace, which suggests it was replaced by something else. So once again, we're going to do some math. This is pretty basic. So previous count of events minus the post count of events, that's cost per event. For this use case or example, it's about 1280. Same math again, only this time for the self-service resets. We've saved over those 60 days about $1,200. And if we do the cumulative time for the volume of reduction for the mobile app MFA prompts, we see over the 60 days, we could argue that we've saved $19,000 in terms of employee productivity. This is where you get to start playing with your own lies, damn lies, and statistics, because how valuable is that extra 9 seconds every time? In my experience, people don't really ask those really smart questions. So get a feel for your business and figure out how much of your own statistics you can get away with. Now, here's part of how you can get away with this. You need to show your work, right? There's always going to be a little bit of skepticism when an IT simpleton like me tries to dabble in the ways of money. But if you show your work, at least somebody else could recreate it. It also shows your own confidence in your methodology as you present it to leadership and the stakeholders. Then also, most importantly, it gives you the template to rework these value metrics if you want to revisit them in the future. All right, so now that we've shown savings immediately for the 60 days past the change, let's really gild the lily here, and let's start doing an annual projection. How much will these changes save the company, assuming everything stays constant for the next year? So we're going to take years and days, 365, divided by the time period we're observing the impact of these changes, divided by 60. Multiply it by the cost savings for the period observed. So for that, 1280 is the value, and we're going to show that we can project to save just shy of $8,000 on password resets received by IT support based on this change. Same math here. This one comes out to $7,365. And here's where big numbers really help. We can argue that we've saved $117,000 in employee productivity savings by having people use passwordless versus MFA prompts. And we present this in a format like this. I've had success showing, here's the high-level table. There's going to be some references to the methodology at a glance, right? Because you want to be very transparent as you present this and withstand criticism as best of your abilities. Now, this isn't exactly super sexy, so you can kind of amp it up by going, holy crap, 132, 528 in anticipated annual savings. Look at the incredible impact that identity can have on your organizations in terms of cost out. You can also start considering more of your own statistics by telling additional stories like percentages. Holy cannoli, 72% reduction in self-service password resets by rolling out passwordless. Hot dog. Hopefully that'll get your executives a little more excited, a little more invested in identity. So I've already said that, or perhaps I didn't. As we're looking for the opportunities to demonstrate the business value of identity and security to the organization, there's two ways to do it. There's the proactive revenue generating activities, which are beautiful. There's the cost out, which is also very impactful, but the pie gets smaller, that gets harder. And so as you start looking for perhaps things you have not done, we need to expand that ability to forecast to something where we don't necessarily have the data to back up or show an impact yet. So what is the difference between forecasting and impact analysis as far as I'm concerned? Well, corporate needs you to find the differences between these two pictures. I have opinions about this. They're the same picture. And again, caveat, I'm just a simple backwater Virginian identity practitioner, so there may be a lot more rigor and discipline available to make these arguments, but my point is, even those without formal training can occasionally find the way to make the good story there. So regarding forecasting, it's the exact same process as we did before. Identify the potential impacts to the status quo based on the change you anticipate making. You're going to assess the level of effort and availability for gathering each of those data points. Calculate the event for the baseline based on the information we have available. And here's where it changes. This is where we start wildly prognosticating. We're going to make an educated guess on the impact that the future capability may have. This is a necessary leap. It is not a fabrication. We can't have data on something where we have not done it ourselves internally. You may consider looking at other case studies or white papers or implementation, logs, journals, whatever, to see if you can get some good data to help inform your prognostication, but you're going to have to take a guess here. And then based on those data, you run through those calculations once more, and you get your forecasted business value. Oops, missed a point. And once more, show your work, be transparent. Again, you're going to take a guess here. You're going to put yourself on the line, and putting yourself on the line is always scary because a lot of times your forecast grossly misaligned to what the actuality is, right? This has almost become a bit of a meme in terms of sales forecasting, those very optimistic folk. But I'm going to throw out here that making an educated guess, let alone a wild, crazy guess, like, again, something that is backed by, to your best of your ability, the knowledge you have, it's better to make that forecast, be wrong, be transparent about it, incorporate how you miscalculated to further improve your own ability to do business value analysis, than to be the person who doesn't even try. Nobody forgets, nobody remembers if you took a swing built on good data, good knowledge, and you're wrong. However, if you nail it, suddenly you're a prophet, and everybody thinks you have incredible credibility. So don't be afraid. So, to review, remember that money is the language of business. So please recontextualize what it is you're doing and what you want to do in terms of how to affect that bottom line. New revenue is better than cost out, but cost out is also perfectly darn good. We want to identify the value drivers as part of preparing for the change, and then prepare for the pre-change metrics pre-capture, and also message as part of this exercise that it's going to take us a little bit of time past the release to really have hard data that'll help us not only prove that it was valuable, but then also forecast how valuable we anticipate it being. So BVA is critical to quality, so business value analysis, in my opinion. Once again, show your work. And if you're going to apply these principles for something where work is not done, congratulations, you're doing the exact same thing, only now we call it forecasting. And because, once more, I'll leave with these principles and hope they're helpful for you because, join it with me now, the language of business is money. One more time, the language of business is money. The language of business is money. Thank you. Any questions? Sure thing. So on, Pig. This table or something else?
The last one with numbers, there was a big splash.
Oh, yeah, I remember. Okay, we'll work our way down there. While I'm trying to find that.
Thank you.
There you go. So for this particular case study, like there was more metrics gathered. I thought for the interest of being concise and giving an example, I would narrow the analysis to this. But to your point, that's the additional kind of level of richness and detail I would definitely invite you to do in your own business value analysis internally. Just to make sure that was said. He asked if there's a specific methodology we use factoring in the count of employees for this, and so that was the question for the recording. Vlad.
First of all, as a mathematician, I enjoy that. As a human kind of behavior person working in identity, I can tell you that one thing always works, and this is a recommendation for everybody. Talk to business people and ask them where they're spending time they don't want to spend related to identities. Seriously. That will open up, because this example, everybody knows about it, like can use immediately in your presentation towards management to, do that. Like, for example, I worked in a bank and we found out that one of the hardest things for people were specific access to the specific application. And the reason for that, because that's a financial application which times out to every 5 minutes. Okay? So they said that if you can help us get rid of that story, then we can really save a lot of time and a lot of frustration for us and the people who are calling us from our clients. And that was added not only as a money, but also a user experience. And for bank, it's incredibly important to have experience and that translates into money too. At the end. But even the amount of time they spend on it, and you can save this amount of money, time and lots of money, but also was a very good, indicator for our management to actually listen to us and install, in our case, sorry, we use Bing, but that doesn't matter. Adding one more step for MFA for Bing automation, so the push instead of like calling or going to the phone, that was really, really good.
Excellent. All right. So an excellent anecdote from Vlad on how important it is to engage your business stakeholders to find the pain points and the metrics they're going to care about. Thank you. There we go. We got about 2 more minutes until we're 5 till. Any other questions? Fantastic. Excuse me?
How well have you used these data to convince your business stakeholders?
All right, so the question was, how well have I used this data to convince my business stakeholders? All right, so remember, it's a case study. I can make no allusions as to where this may have been implemented, but in my experience, this is a very powerful story. Granted, it's not quite as forward-thinking in terms of new capabilities of identity and the big swings that some dramatic re-architecture or even business process changes could have on either net new revenue or cost out. But if nothing else, this demonstrates kind of confidence in identity that we can, in fact, be a contributor to the business as opposed to one of those cost center Morlocks, things like that. So to finally loop around and answer your question, over the journey of my career, it has been once I started dabbling in things that were not identity that enabled me to achieve new things and convince the business in ways that I didn't think were going to be possible to achieve. So I would say yes, very impactful. Can't guarantee it's a magic bullet. Every organization is different, the cultures are different, but across my sample size, I would say this has actually been a very powerful tool or story, better said, to help convince them of the efficacy and value of identity. All righty, thank you very much.